members. So we've got a way forward on this amendment. So I'd like to hand back to Councillor Roper then.
Thank you, Chairman. Having taken advice and looked at a different way forward, although withdrawing none of my remarks, I will withdraw the amendment.
Do you have a seconder for that?
Can I propose an alternative amendment? Is that yes? That's what we're doing. I would like to propose that we change the amendment to recognise that we basically, what I'm going to read it out as I think we might be able to agree. We oppose the proposal to remove the winter fuel payment from pensioners who do not claim pension credit or are on other benefits, recognising the disproportionate impact this will have on vulnerable residents, particularly those in rural communities like Broadland. And then I would like to also use the second paragraph of Councillor Roper's suggested amendment. Would that be acceptable?
I believe, Councillor Holland, that the proposal was going to be that as we Chancellor Exchequer and the...
Yes, I beg your pardon. It was, yes, also, I'm so sorry. Yes, it was to write not just to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, but also to write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wymark, a seconder for that. Councillor Roper is a seconder. Councillor Wymark, your response on that?
I'll accept that. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, that amendment's been accepted, so now got a substantive motion. So, straight to vote, or we have to debate now? We open up the debate now on this substantive motion. So, Councillor Empson, you've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, we are district councillors in this room and have always worked hard in Broadland to protect our most vulnerable residents. We are not putting groups against each other. We are looking at a decision that affects a group of people we see as most vulnerable at this time of year. Supporting this motion, that as a local district councillor you want to support residents and fight for them, voting against shows a lack of understanding of how nearly 31,000 pensioners in our rural community could be affected by a confused central government decision. I personally do not feel the word condemn is strong enough, but I will agree with the change if that is what the vote is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Empson. Anybody else like to make a comment on this? Councillor Morrell?
Yes, you know, as the shadow portfolio of community housing, you know, I have to say that I strongly support this, the amendment. You know, we should be in this room looking towards our residents, you know, and the effects that it's going to have from the Help Hub. Now, why Councillor Booth had to go political on this, down to his choice, but hey, you know, if you want to say, you know, the capitulation of the Chancellor to the unions and the wage rise is causing this, then fine, we'll go with that. That's fine. But yeah, this should be about protecting our residents and making sure that we're doing everything we can. So as the amended proposal goes forward, I'm wholeheartedly supportive.
Any other members? Comments? Councillor Hartley?
Thank you. I'm sure I'm not the only one to note there is a certain amount of delicious irony in the architects of austerity suddenly caring about vulnerable people. I would love to support this, and if the wording was tweaked just a tiny bit more, I could. I'm not actually opposed to means testing benefits, like every other benefits for working age people, for those who are the most vulnerable. I do think it's fair. However, I recognise particularly the bit you mentioned around vulnerable residents who in rural communities who aren't on mains gas, it costs them more. I would very much be in favour of writing to whoever, quite frankly, to work with any kind of solutions. It's that the cliff edge is the issue for me. I think it's fair that benefits should be means tested, but there's always people who are just on that cliff edge who miss out, and it's those people who should be targeted. And I would very much pledge my support to that, but I can't support the wording as it is. I support elements of it, but not the entire piece. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to probably just abstain. I don't I'm not massively against it, but I definitely don't condemn it. But I will have to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harpy. Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you very much. I certainly support the notion of the motion, but what I do condemn, using that word, is the divisiveness and the hypocrisy certainly coming across in this. As has been pointed out already, there have been many actions taken by the previous government to certainly undermine those who deserve the support and that haven't got it, and have increased inequality over the last few years. It does make me somewhat angry that we have this approach, certainly at a local government level, to this kind of divisiveness when we should be really collaborating and working together. And I'd just like to also point out that maybe we need to look at a broader issue of how we support everyone within our society. And as a policy, just to promote the idea of a universal basic income, which will ensure that everyone does have the means to keep warm during the winter and eat well. And that actually we ought to be looking at an overhaul of the systems that we have to ensure that we do have, you know, a basic income that supports us all. And then for those who are lucky and wealthy enough to have more, that through that taxation system things are evened out. But it's something that we clearly need to look at in the longer term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Councillor Starland next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I support this motion, and as people will be aware, the Liberal Democrats, that's something we hold nationally, that this policy isn't helpful. I think it's just worth pointing out the highlighting of hypocrisy about claims that the government say one thing when in opposition and when in power. I think that could also be levelled at those whose party was in power in January, and I align myself with Councillor Roper, who pointed out that in January at County Council there were members of the County Council who may even be in this room now who are not supportive of measures to protect the most vulnerable, who now were finding their party in opposition seek to suddenly champion their cause. And yes, I think we just have to be very careful when we're bandying around the words of hypocrisy, because that can come back and slap you in the face.
Thank you very much, Councillor Starland. Could I also, just a quick note before we move on, just like to note to all councillors, there's no use of your phones while in this. If you please put your phones down while in this meeting, thank you very much. I'd like to go back now if there's no more comments from any members here. Councillor Lammin.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I find it very unfortunate that our country finds itself in this current financial situation. So clearly cuts do have to be made, but I do find it very surprising that cuts to the winter fuel allowance are being made, because it seems from the calculations that have been made that if the full number of people who could be claiming pension credit actually claimed it, then cutting this winter fuel allowance wouldn't actually be saving us very much money as a country at all. And I think we do need other means of keeping people out of fuel poverty, keeping them safe and warm during the winter. And I would like to see that if we are going to give people an allowance, we should be giving it to them to make insulation improvements to their home, perhaps introducing solar panels and all those sorts of measures that would actually reduce their fuel bills. So I am happy to support this motion, but as I said, I'd like to see the money being used very specifically to keep people's bills low permanently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lammin. Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
I agree that all measures should be taken to actually encourage people to make their houses more efficient and lower the running costs, and fuel poverty is obviously a major issue. And I live in a very old house, but I actually took the decision many decades ago to actually insulate all external walls inside and upstairs and down. But what I would also like to say is some years ago, benefits were reduced for people with spare bedrooms. Now, I don't like the idea that the government should be actually encouraging people to move house from their family homes where they may well have lived all their lives and brought up their family by using the benefit system and the government system. And from what Councillor Wymark is saying, he is of a similar opinion in that people who live in big houses with a lot of capital tied up in their houses should not be encouraged to move home and should be helped with the winter fuel allowance to actually heat this home. But the principles are the same. If you live in a big property and you don't need it, you should move down, you should downsize. And that's something I disagree with. And I think we all ought to be careful of, which has already been said, that when we say one thing in one context, it should also apply in another. So, we ought to be very, very careful about what we say and what we support and don't support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beadle. Any other councillors? I think we're done on this one. Okay, so I'd like to go back to Councillor Wymark to respond just before we go over the vote. Does the seconder wish to reply on this? Already spoken? I think the seconder has already spoken. So, Councillor Wymark, do you want to speak before we wrap up for the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just obviously it's been a bit of a mixed bag, the discussion, and I wouldn't have expected otherwise, really. But I must agree 100% with Councillor Lamming. As I said initially, I doubt this will actually save this government very much money at all. I think there's a huge cost to this, to the anxiety of older people who are wondering whether or not they're going to be able to pay their bills this winter, and I think that's been put to one side. It's not really been thought about too much, but it is really, really important. Some of them may, get pension credits and or other benefits, which will mean they will continue to get their winter payment. However, going through this is really, really traumatic, for older people, and I think that's a real shame. That's not really been thought through, and I just think we can make lots and lots of political points, and obviously some people have, and I think that's unfortunate. But as I said, it's one of those things. But I think we've come to a resolution that we're all generally in agreement, or generally, I say, because obviously, Councillor Hartley has said she can't support this, and I understand that politically. But I do think, in general, we're in agreement that this will affect our vulnerable older people in this district, and we also accept that the likelihood is that the cost will fall back to us as a district. We will, through the Help Hub, be given additional support. We already are, even if it's just filling in the forms, to get pension credit. So it's already falling back to us as a district, and I think that's something we really need to take on board. And so often, I'm not going to be political about this, but all governments of all colours have done this over the years. They make decisions which make huge impact upon us as a council, and huge cost to us, and it's not thought through. And I think that's a real shame. But I'm really pleased that in general that we can actually support this resolution. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wymark. So, okay, I'd like to ask. No, because we've done the amendment. This is the main substantive motion, not the substantive motion. No. Okay, so I'd like to ask members now to put this to the vote, then, please. So, by show of hands. So, could we have a show of hands for those in favour? That's 28 in favour. Could those against the motion, please? Do you have any abstentions? Thank you very much. There's 7 abstentions. Thank you very much. So I'd like to announce that that vote was carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Vincent, if you've got something quickly.
Could I raise a point of information on an item earlier in the agenda, please? Something's come to light for me. It's
Okay,
under agenda item 10.
Agenda item 10.
A statement was made by Councillor Riley that the Norse Group had made a strategic decision to withdraw from all joint ventures.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if that was correct. I have since checked that with the Norse Group, and that is not correct. And we need to be very careful of statements that we're making.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Riley, just briefly.
Yeah, I'm on the governance panel for the Norse Group, and my understanding at that panel is that the intention is to withdraw from joint ventures in terms of property development. So not all joint ventures. There are some joint ventures, but not property development. It's actually specific property development ventures. So yeah, qualify that, Karen. That was actually not meant all ventures, but I did mean property development ventures.
Thank you very much for providing that clarity on that one. Thank you very much for bringing that to attention. So I'd like to move on to item 16 on the agenda here, so exclusion of the public and the press. I'd like to propose under section 100A, part 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following reports involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972 as amended. I'll ask to show of hands and general agreement.